All right, imagine this. You're on a 15-woman Japanese expedition to summit Mount Everest in 1975. Weeks away from your goal, avalanche buries you alive, right there in your tent. You're knocked unconscious, not once, not twice, but 6 times.
Oh, wow.
Now, most people would pack it in right there, call it a miracle, just to be alive.
Right.
Not Junko Tabei. She recovers and days later becomes the first woman to stand atop Everest.
It's incredible. It really does. I think that captures her whole life, defying the odds, pushing those limits, achieving things that most people would say impossible.
And that's what we're diving into today. The life of Junko Tabei.
A remarkable woman.
More than a climber.
Oh, yeah.
Using the History Daily podcast, the first woman to climb Mount Everest. Not just her achievements, but the lessons from her journey for all of us.
Yeah, I think it's especially relevant for us, maybe a little bit more seasoned listeners who might think we've seen it all.
Right.
Junko's life really proves it's never too late to discover a passion, challenge those norms, and really leave an impact.
Yeah, and for the younger listeners, too.
Oh, absolutely.
So let's rewind all the way back to Junko's childhood. Post-World War II Japan. Fukushima. 1939.
A time of great hardship.
And she was only 4'9", often labeled, a weak child because of her stature. You can imagine the kind of limitations people would place on her.
Right. I mean, we see that all the time, don't we? Where people tell you what you can and cannot do based on how they perceive you. But you know what? Junko's story, I think, is a powerful reminder that a lot of those limitations, we put those on ourselves.
Yeah. It was actually a school trip in 4th grade that ignited her love of climbing. Something about the mountains just called to her. It sparked this passion that would really define her life. But we have to remember, this is the 1960s Japan. Mountaineering, that's a man's world.
Oh, yeah. Very much so. And just to participate, Junko had to join men's climbing clubs. Imagine the constant scrutiny and judgment just for being a woman in that space.
I mean, there's a proverb that she talked about. The nail that sticks out gets hammered down.
Oh, that's so true. It really illustrates the societal pressure to just conform, blend in, and not rock the boat.
But instead of letting it crush her passion, she used it as fuel, turned frustration into action, channeling it into something amazing.
Right, and that brings us to 1969.
Pivotal year.
Oh, absolutely. Junko, she was fed up with the limitations placed on her. She founded Japan's first all-female climbing club. It wasn't just about, climbing mountain. This was about creating a space where women could pursue their passion on their own terms.
Right, it's about empowerment.
Exactly.
And for their first expedition, they set their sights on Annapurna III, Himalayas.
Now, this wasn't just any climb,
Right.
Annapurna III. This was considered one of the most technically challenging peaks in the world at that time.
It's hard to overstate just how audacious that goal was. This group of women, many of them juggling families and jobs on top of training, taking on a challenge that had stumped seasoned all-male teams.
And they did it. They summited Annapurna III in 1970. It wasn't just a personal victory. It was symbolic, shattering expectations, demonstrating that women could be just as capable in this demanding, very demanding sport.
Right, proving all the doubters wrong.
Exactly. But there's something even more profound that I think was revealed during that climb, something that goes beyond just climbing mountains.
What's that?
It challenged a very deeply ingrained Japanese cultural norm. Stoicism.
Yeah.
Suffering and silence.
Right, never show weakness.
And on Annapurna III, that almost proved disastrous.
Because...
Think about it. You're at extreme altitude, exhaustion, you're freezing.
Right.
But there's this pressure to keep it all inside. Don't burden anyone with your struggles.
Yeah, and that could be dangerous, I would
Oh,
say.
absolutely. And Junko recognized that. She saw how this could really hinder communication, prevent that team from truly supporting each other. So you know what she did.
What did she do?
She encouraged vulnerability. She fostered an environment where her teammates felt safe to say, hey, I'm struggling, I need help. It was radical, really, departing from the norm.
And it paid off.
Oh, it was crucial to their success.
Right.
They operated as a true unit, supporting each other through the toughest moments. It wasn't about individual strength anymore. It was about collective resilience. I think that's one of the biggest takeaways from Junko's story, and it's relevant to everyone. How often do we hold back, from asking for help, afraid to look weak or burden someone?
I think all the time. It's so ingrained in us, especially if you're raised with that kind of expectation.
Yeah.
But as you said, Junko's experience shows us that vulnerability.
It's not a weakness.
No.
It's a strength. It allows us to connect deeper, build support, and navigate challenges, achieve greater things together.
So, after conquering Annapurna III, challenging these cultural norms, Junko set her sights on the ultimate prize,
Of course.
Mount Everest.
This is Junko Tabei. She didn't take the easy road.
No, she did not.
We got to remember, this is 1975. Even getting permission for a women's team to attempt Everest, that was a battle in itself.
And the funding.
Oh, forget about it.
Junko had to fight for every penny. Think bake sales teaching piano. She was sewing gear from scraps.
Wow.
She even used her car cover to make waterproof gloves.
You're kidding?
I'm not. It's almost funny, but it just shows you how resourceful she was.
It also shows you the lack of support, right? For women in mountaineering back then, I mean, male teams, they'd get those corporate sponsorships, Junko. Grassroots all the way, sheer grit.
And then just weeks before they're set to leave for Everest, disaster strikes. The avalanche we talked about earlier.
Thousands of feet up,
Yeah.
camped on the mountain. Suddenly you're just swallowed by this wall of snow and ice. Junko and her team buried in their tents.
It's unbelievable that she survived, pulled herself out of that after being knocked unconscious 6 times.
6 times. I mean, come on. Most people would have called it quits right then and there.
Right.
But not Junko.
Well,
She just saw it as another obstacle to overcome. And get this, 12 days later,
unbelievable.
she's standing on top of the world, the summit of Everest.
Defying not just the mountain, but every single person who doubted her.
May 16th, 1975, a date for the history books.
But it doesn't end there,
Oh, no, no, no. This is just the beginning.
because she doesn't just check Everest off the list and move on.
Nope. Junko keeps pushing. For the next 30 years, she continues to climb, becoming the first woman to summit the 7 summits.
Wow, the highest peak on every continent.
Yeah.
What drove her? What fueled that constant need for a challenge? It's more than just, wanting to be the first, I think.
Right. There's something deeper there. She saw climbing as a platform for something bigger. She wanted to show others, especially women, that you can break down those barriers. You can achieve anything you set your mind to.
And she didn't just talk about it.
No.
She walked the walk. She got a master's degree focused on environmental issues on Everest. And she became a huge advocate for conservation.
Which makes sense, right?
Yeah.
When you spend your life conquering these natural wonders, you understand how important it is to protect them.
And then her work with the children impacted by the Fukushima disaster.
Taking them up Mount Fuji.
Powerful, right.
So powerful. That image of resilience, of hope, it really captures Junko's spirit, facing hardship with courage, with compassion, and using her experience to lift others up.
Junko Tabei passed away in 2016,
Yeah,
but her legacy lives on.
absolutely. Inspiring generations of climbers and non-climbers alike.
Her story shows us that we all have those Everests to climb, those challenges that seem impossible.
Whether it's a new career, a creative project, or just speaking your truth.
Junko proves that with enough determination,
You can do anything.
and maybe even more important, her story teaches us that success, it's not just about your own achievements.
Right.
It's about using your experience as your platform to make the world a little bit better.
Now, speaking of making a difference, let's talk about Junko's commitment to environmental conservation.
Something that's especially relevant today as we deal with climate change and the need to protect our planet. It's amazing how somebody who spent so much of their life conquering these natural wonders also became such a fierce advocate for protecting them.
Yeah, it really speaks to that understanding, that connection between us and the natural world. Junko wasn't just focused on getting to the top of the mountain. She saw the bigger picture.
Right. It wasn't just about the thrill. It was about the responsibility that comes with experiencing these places.
And she put her money where her mouth was. She went back to school, got her master's degree in comparative social culture, focused on the environmental impact on Everest.
Wow, no, that's dedication.
She wasn't messing around. She wanted to understand the problem, not just talk about it.
So it wasn't enough to just raise awareness. She actually wanted to help find solutions.
Exactly.
And she was really vocal about the trash left behind on Everest, the pollution from these expeditions, and what it was doing to the local ecosystem.
Remember, this was back in the 70s and 80s. Long before these issues were really on people's radar, Junko was way ahead of her time.
A true pioneer, not just in climbing, but in pushing for sustainability within the sport.
And she didn't just talk about it either. She lived it. She always chose to fund her expeditions through teaching and speaking.
Instead of those big corporate sponsorships.
Yeah, which says a lot about her, I think.
Right, we've talked about it before, but it shows her integrity, her commitment to keeping these experiences pure.
It's like she was saying, my love for these mountains, it's not about money, it's not about fame. It's about respecting them, making sure they're around for future generations to enjoy.
And that message is more important today than ever.
Absolutely. With climate change and everything, we all need to think about how we're treating our planet.
It's about reducing our impact, being sustainable, realizing our actions have consequences for the natural world.
And finding that balance, right, between pushing ourselves and respecting those limits.
Junko Tabei showed us that you can achieve incredible things, but you don't have to compromise your values. She stayed connected to nature and committed to making a difference.
It's a powerful story, the human spirit, pushing through, finding hope, and a reminder that we each have a role to play in making the world a better place.
Well said. If you want to dive even deeper into Junko's life, check out that Full History Daily episode, The First Woman to Climb Mount Everest. And if you enjoyed this deep dive, be sure to subscribe to The Deep Dive for more inspiring journeys. Like and follow us wherever you listen to your podcasts. And tell a friend.
We'll see you next time. Keep exploring, keep questioning, and never stop pushing those boundaries. You never know what you might achieve.